Well, good evening once again. It's strange seeing it's the Monday Review Show on a Wednesday. For those of you who may or may not have been watching on Monday evening, gremlins crept into the system, as they generally do in other walks of life, and certainly with my little situation, messed up the whole show, couldn't go live. So Keith very kindly agreed to come on Wednesday because it was supposed to be, and will still be, the last show of this particular football season. So thank you once again for your patience, and thank you for watching throughout the year. And thanks very much to, I suppose I could call him my very good friend and colleague now, former Premier League. Thank you. Former Premier League referee, former FIFA referee, former head of the PGMOL, and the man who introduced goal line technology, which has been fantastic over the years. Keith Hackett. Thanks again, Keith, and apologies for bringing you in on a Wednesday instead of a Monday.
Great to be on. Great to be on.
Okay, and to all of you out there, if you'd like to make a comment or ask a question, or you've got anything that you'd like to clarify, please do so. Right down on the bottom left-hand side or right-hand side of your screen. I'm going to put on shortly. You can make comments. You can do so down on the right-hand side of the screen. Now, Saturday and rather Sunday, the last weekend, was supposed to be like an end of season situation, with the only thing that was at stake really were European Champions League places, because the league had already been won by Liverpool, and the relegation situation had been sorted out as well. So there were just the playoffs to get promotion to the next league. And just before we go on, just our sympathies to all the people who are injured in the Liverpool situation with that car driving into people. And we don't want to comment too much because it's still an issue for the courts and so on. But our sympathies to all the people who were injured in that situation. Absolutely. But on the Sunday, we had a game that caused quite a bit of stir. It was Manchester United against Aston Villa. Now, the red card, let's deal with that one first, Keith. Red card, yes or no?
Absolutely. I think that Martinez came out of goal, was well outside his penalty area, and body checked the oncoming forward. It's never an easy decision, denial, because as a referee, you've got to visualize very clearly the criteria, the distance from goal, the movement towards goal, which is fairly loose in its terminology. Then you've obviously got, is it a foul or not? I mean, to clarify, if an incident of that nature takes place inside the penalty area, what you have to ask is, did the offender attempt to play the ball? Well, in this case, he's outside the area. He's made no attempt to play the ball. And the probability is the forward ability to control the ball. And I think he had a good chance to control the ball. And then, were there any covering defenders? And the answer again was no. So I go back to the old sort of system that I sort of used and I passed on to many referees, and that is visualize the incident, take away the offender, in this case, take away the goalkeeper in your thoughts. He has committed a foul. And if he wasn't there, would that player go on and have a shot on goal? And the answer is yes. Would a defender come in? Answer, no chance of getting there. So clear red card, sold very positively by the referee, Thomas Bramall. He was in a good position. He didn't hesitate. There was little fuss. Like all these things, they're big decisions on a big game.
Sure.
And on that one, he did extremely well, no question.
And of course, he had no way of knowing what was coming down the line later on in the game because of that incident between the Villa forward, and the Man United goalkeeper. And
Yes.
the big issue, the big talking point here was, was the goalkeeper in control of the ball, and was it kicked out of his hands? And because I've had lots of comments, people saying, "No, it was dangerous play. The goalkeeper had the ball and it was there." But the whole issue centered around, was he in control of the ball or was he not? And did the attacking player in any way foul the goalkeeper by extricating, if you like, the ball from the keeper's grip? I put inverted commas.
When we actually look at possession, we actually want to at least one hand on the ball, and it can be on the ground, and that's possession, or it can be against the body, and that is possession. So we look at one, we don't look at two. What happened here was a fumble by the referee, by the goalkeeper. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sadly, the referee was out of position. He was too far away, and I think went for a safety first decision of blowing the whistle and guessing the decision. And sadly, when we're operating with VAR in the modern game at the elite level, the amount of forensic examination of an incident like that is, in my era, your era. If we'd have blown, I think little would have been said. But we're in the world of professional referees, and we're in the world of this forensic examination by the media. And when you looked at the replays, there was no way that the goalkeeper had possession of the ball. The forward who challenged for the ball didn't really have to challenge, because the ball actually, he fumbled it and it came towards him. So there wasn't any scenario there. I've seen some comment about he stepped on the goalkeeper's hands. Well, there's no evidence for it in a video. That's in a way fiction that happened. So sadly, he got the decision wrong. And the reason he got it wrong was he was too far away and he guessed. Then, of course, you say, well, and the ball went in the back of the net, which is the sad part for the referee, because, he blew the whistle. You and I know that when a referee blows the whistle, players stop, some of them, not all of them. You don't know what that impact is of the whistle. Less concentration, all that went. But anyhow, they scored a goal. But because he'd blown the whistle, VAR couldn't come in. And I think that sometimes the criteria for VAR is probably on occasions too tight. I would have loved to have been able to say VAR comes in and he sees that. But the problem is he's blown the whistle. So they can't.
So just to sorry to cut across you, but just to make that absolutely clear to the viewers, what is the significance of the fact that he had blown the whistle as distinct from not blowing the whistle in relation to VAR?
Right. VAR can only come in on a goal.
Yeah.
And the sadness is that the whistle's gone. So whether they score or not, that doesn't allow the VAR to come in. So VAR can only come in on penalty kicks, offside, goals, and mistaken identity. Yeah. And the difficulty here, and I think the fans' difficulty was, well, they've scored. Now check it. And if there's an error by the referee, you can allow the goal. Well, you can't. The referee stopped the game.
It already blown.
He'd already blown, and the media were very clear that the whistle had gone. So, I think the headlines were it cost Aston Villa 100 million. That's the amount of money that they get from the Champions League for sure. If you qualify, it's a huge amount of money. The decision did impact on the score, but it's over a season.
Do you think it would have, Keith? At that, United were leading 2-0 at that stage, so that would have been 2-1. And I know all the people will, and conspiracy theorists will all come out and say, well, one goal, we might have got another goal, and all that sort of story. And in fairness to the referee, if he might have seen that the keeper wasn't actually in possession, and it's only when you forensically examine it, you can see that he wasn't. But from where he was and what he was visualizing, the keeper had his hands on the ball. So I think it's only fair to Thomas Bramall that he thought that the keeper had possession of the ball and picked out of his hands.
Absolutely. I mean, you and I know that often when we're coaching referees, not only do we talk about proximity of play, but we actually say viewing angle is even more important. And that's why the training of referees physically is about an explosive sprint. And that means a side movement, because, the movement in and around the ball area is so important to enable you to get a good viewing angle. Excuse me. And I think that on this occasion, there's no doubts that he's actually taken the view that he's in possession of the ball.
Yeah.
And there's no conspiracy, there's no cheating here. He's a human being and he's made an error. And that's football.
Yeah. The comments now from the Villa manager, they're never helpful, because he's digging up all kinds of stories, and that causes all kinds of controversies as well. And in some instances, as happened to Anthony Taylor on that European match that time, where he was, jostled, and his family were jostled at the airport, all because of comments made by a manager. Surely Unai Emery has to be made to answer for his comments, because that can lead to all kinds of problems. Now, I know in South Africa they do it all the time, and I was taken out of stadiums in the boot of a car, and even in a police personnel carrier one time. But that can lead to somebody getting killed in a volatile situation. Surely these managers have to show a little bit more restraint when they're making comments about decisions.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a great deal of passion when you actually look at him. He's an extremely passionate man on the touchline. You see him heading and kicking every ball and expressing his actions or views through body language. The Premier League over a number of years have had channels of communication. I've talked about them in the past. 30 minutes, he could go into the dressing room and perhaps have a discussion with the referee if he wishes, seeks clarification. Ultimately, at the end of the day, here was a guy who was thinking that he's going to go to the Champions League and earn the 100 million, and his goalkeeper got sent off. Correct decision, as we've already discussed, and then he's faced with this one. And I think the passion and self-control went out the window. So I've no doubts that the FA will and should, in fact, charge the manager, despite his views and despite what we've said, because I don't think you can make those sort of public comments. It's very difficult when you're in a hothouse of a situation, you're extremely disappointed, and somebody's thrusting a mic in your face, to actually restrain what you actually say, because it's within a few minutes of the end of the game when he's been asked to comment. I just I would like I'd like a cooling off period, a greater cooling off period, to enable whoever's unhappy with a decision to gather their thoughts and be a little bit more contrite in terms of what they say. Yeah,
because, as I said, it's happened to me many times when I was refereeing in South Africa, where the fans are very, very passionate, and in some cases very, very volatile. I've seen them breaking up stadiums and throwing chairs onto the field, and et cetera, et cetera. So I think managers, particularly in England, where you don't expect that kind of thing, but it seems to be becoming more regular, where managers are coming out and criticizing referees' decisions.
Yeah, I
they
think
really need to hold back on things like that.
I do, but I also think the PGMOL have got to deliver through their referees better performances on the field of play. Putting it bluntly, they're spending £39 million to deliver elite level performances. You're never going to have utopia of a game going without a problem. But then what you've got to do is you've got to look at the appointment process. For example, on the last week of the season, it's the closing of the season, the book. You want, I think, your best referees. And I think if we look at, not me saying who the best referees are, if we look at the appointments.
Yeah, that was my next. That fails nicely because that was the next question of refereeing performances.
If you look throughout the season, Anthony Taylor, 31 games, Michael Oliver, 26, Chris Kavanagh, 25, Simon Hooper, 24, Peter Banks, 23, Samuel Barrett, 23, Robert Jones, 22, Craig Pawson, 22, Darren England, 20, Andy Madley, 20, Stuart Atwell, 19, Tony Harrington, 18, John Brooks, 16, Jared Gillett, 16. So, in a way, when you look at that list, it's a list of how the PGMOL, I think, see their match officials. So when you look at the 10 appointments, we know that Oliver, for example, in number 2 position, was given an appointment in the VAR room. For me, I would have had him out in the middle. Now, the problem they got was that Newcastle were fighting for Champions League. And so what he does is he finds a game for Oliver in the middle that's not going to impact on the Champions League. So that might well have been at Liverpool, but then, if we look at Anthony Taylor, who lives in the Greater Manchester area, he referees Manchester clubs. So are we saying we don't put him on a game that's because of Newcastle's position, because we're questioning his integrity? I don't think so. I think that we don't question the referee's integrity. We say, look, on the final week of the season, you want your best referees out in the middle.
Yeah, and it really shouldn't make any difference, Keith, where if the guy lives next door to one of the teams, because as you mentioned, if you're going to take that into consideration, you effectively are questioning their integrity, that they're not capable of being impartial and fair and unbiased to the team just because they live down the road from the club. Yeah.
I mean, I just think that I did it on a weekly basis, the appointments, and I would sit with a spreadsheet in front of me. I would have the assessors marks, the delegate marks in front of me of the performances and the averages and where that referee sits in my table, and then I would every week go through the referee appointments. Yeah. Now, on some occasions, I'd get a referee knocking on my door saying, why haven't I had a game for 2 or 3 weeks? I go, well, the guys are better. I'm appointing the better guys at the moment. You've got to improve your performances. I'm giving you a run in the championship. You've got to deliver top class, because just like the manager of a football club, I'm going to appoint the top referees to the games, right? And when available, I will try to bring in younger referees and all that goes, because I want churn and I want succession planning. But I'd know when to do that in the season, and it's not the last game of the season.
Yeah. When it comes to that, if anybody who's on the SG1, they should be capable of refereeing any match in the Premiership.
Oh. So, there's no question about it.
How can how can you say this guy's not good enough or that guy's not good enough? Is it all based on reports from match assessors, referee inspectors, or how does it work?
Well, it's based on performance. It's simply performance in some areas.
So, Keith, sorry. So in
yeah.
whose opinion? In whose opinion is that
Well,
performance?
I had an independent assessor at the
Yeah.
game. I also had a match delegate at the same game, and they marked the referee, right?
Would
So
they
I
have been
would have-
referees?
Pardon?
Would they have been ex-referees?
Yes.
The assessors and the match
Yeah.
delegates.
The match delegates were former managers and players.
Hmm.
And
Can
so
there be a
that you,
conflict there?
well, the way I looked at it was, yeah, there might be conflict, but at the same time, you know, what is the customer's view of the performance? And actually, what happened was, on some occasions, you had the match delegates marking higher than the assessors. And when you actually looked at the reports, the quality of reports, they were able to bring in how they manage effectively the players, the laws of the game. There were more, in fact, to be honest with you, I think at times, you know, they gained a great deal of knowledge about the laws of the game. They'd got the practical bit, but now they were checking the laws of the game. And when they went in and did the review, they would ask the referee, well, why did you do this? And then they were getting the information from the referee. So their knowledge, they were almost disciples going back into clubs as former players and managers, actually defending referees at that particular time. It was that scenario. But the situation was that I would be very careful about the exposure of a referee to a particular club. And of course, it was agreed practice that changed in Mike Riley's term in office, because if, for example, in my era, Anthony Taylor, even though he lives in Altrincham and supports Altrincham, I would not have put him on a Manchester game. And that is not questioning his ability, because he's done that now and he's actually refereed really well. It's about, right, not having any throwback from fans and from managers. Well, he only lives up the road and he's a mate of so-and-so, and the contact basis. But then if it goes belly up in that situation, I want his family to be protected.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So there are all reasons behind it. But look, Mike Riley put a coach and horses through that. And now we do get referees who are in close proximity. And Anthony Taylor has proven even me wrong by going and refereeing the games involving Manchester with complete fairness. And you know, it underpins that I won't accept anybody questioning the integrity of a referee at the professional level or even at grassroots level. The reality is, if there were, they're exposed, and the exposure is quite dramatic. And we've seen this season, haven't we? We've seen someone who's not created a massive problem on the field of play, but has had a problem off the field of play with his behavior, and as a result, he is no longer a referee.
Yeah.
So you know, I think this whole question of integrity and behavior is not in question for me. I think the performances, the delivery of accuracy, the performance is about the physicality that they put into the game, the motivation, and the continuous learning platform. You know, I've watched Sam Barrett, who's come onto the league literally this season, and I've watched some excellent performances from him. I've just seen a touch of like a bit of complacency coming in, or a bit of I've done it, I've seen it, and that's when the coach, and I think this is where the weakness is for Howard Webb. the quality of coaching has to be really at the top level. And therefore, to make these adjustments, to go to Sam Barrett and say, look, don't have to prove to me or anyone you're a first-class referee. But I think you need to tweak this and you need to tweak that. And by the way, don't start owning the game. You're there to facilitate the game and apply the laws of the game. And I think these are the things that come through. I think, I know that Jared Gillett, the Australian, started the season carrying an injury. So, but he's performed really well. He was Australia's top referee. I had an arrangement, a one-way arrangement whereby Australian referees from the Brisbane area and New Zealand referees from the country would come to England. We would accommodate them with hotels and with food. They would spend the week with the select group referees, and they would referee the odd game at the academy. And I think, when I look back, we had Peter O'Leary, we had Mike Esther from New Zealand, and then the girl who, and I do apologize, her name's gone at the moment. Those referees came, and those referees went on to referee at World Cup level. We had Jared Gillett come across. He became Australia's number one. And then Chris Beath had also been across, and he became Australia's number one. Now, I think that was giving them the opportunity of actually, one, benchmarking against our referees, their own performances, but then suddenly saying, look, I can do that. So what we did was, instead of them sort of not having the vision of a World Cup or an Olympic game tournament, we opened up and said, look, that opportunity is there. You're refereeing that part of the world. And if you put the effort in, you'll get the choice. And I think Chris Beath, if I'm not mistaken, actually refereed the Olympic Games final. So, I think those sort of things have done well. English referees, Darren England, I think, spent part of the summer last year refereeing in the J League in Japan. Mm-hmm. 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 And so I think that happens more frequently in the other side of the water in Europe than it does in England. But I do think that's an area that there should be more of it.
Yeah. Jared Gillett, I noticed, is wearing a FIFA badge now. Is that given to him by England, or is that his Australian badge?
Well, he was Australia, and he had to give that up, of course, when he came to Liverpool University to study and do research work. And praise to Mike Riley at the time, because Mike Riley persuaded the FA to bring him on board onto the Football League. And of course, he quickly established himself and became an SG1 referee. And he's an excellent communicator. And I think he's done really well. Yeah. And I think good that has happened. Hopefully one day, I don't know if Jared stays, fine and lives in this country, but if he does go back to Australia, I hope that he takes up a role educating referees.
Keith, many, many, many thanks again. I know I'm knocking you out of your little system that you have there by coming on a Wednesday night, and I really, really do appreciate it. I may call on you perhaps during the FIFA Club World, if anything.
Yeah, sure.
Serious happens there, if there's anything controversial, we may come back. But otherwise, to you out there for the whole year, thank you very much for watching, for tuning in, sending your comments. This is the last show for the 24-25 season, and we certainly will be back. I think the Premier League starts on somewhere around the 16th, 17th of August. Yeah. But as I just mentioned to Keith, if anything happens at the FIFA Club World Cup, which is June and July, I think, we certainly will arrange for an extra show to discuss those things. Until then, Keith, many thanks for all your time here, and many thanks to you out there for watching. And until we see you again, goodbye and God bless you all. Thank you.
Bye.